Hey guys, my name's Nick. I'm a Microsoft Certified Expert Administrator. I create a lot of content for MSPs, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you hardening Microsoft Teams from a security and compliance standpoint. So in light of everything going on with coronavirus and everybody shifting into this remote workforce, I thought it was important to put this together to show you what security controls you can put into place today for Teams, not just looking at the immediate effects, but also the long-term effects as well too with these Teams environments you're managing for your customers. So in this video, I'm going to be going through a list of recommended controls. It's going to be demo heavy. I'm going to be showing you how to set up these policies and settings. We'll be going through each one. And then I have some additional controls as well that we'll be going through that I think are more optional. So these are the ones that you see here I think should be implemented on every existing tenant and every new tenant that you onboard, just to have a baseline security and controls in place. And as far as the licensing goes, for some of these settings, I'll define that as we go through here. So the first one here, restrict creation of Teams channels. So by default, whenever you go into a Teams channel as an end user, you have the ability to come down here and click join or create a team. And when you do that, you can click create team and build anything from scratch or use an existing 365 group. So this is fine in general as far as a person coming in to just try to set up their own team. But as you can know firsthand right now, or as you will know in the future, this can quickly get out of hand from people creating a ton of different Teams sites. And what this does in the back end, if you're not familiar, is it creates this 365 group, and additionally a SharePoint site as well too for storing all the files that are part of this Teams channel. So if you do not restrict this, over time this will grow into a big nasty thing that you're trying to manage within the organization, because everybody can create a new Teams channel and upload files, and it gets really messy really quickly. So I like to recommend to restrict this to a certain group of users. And today the only way to do this is through PowerShell commandlets, which I'm going to be showing you here. So the first thing that you would want to do is come into the 365 Admin Center, go into the groups setting over here, and you're going to want to add a security group specifically for these Teams channel creators. And I would do a lot of planning before you set this up, just simply because again you're restricting this to only a certain amount of people who then have access to create the groups and the team channels. You can't separate one or the other. So just understand who that's going to be and have processes in place for people to reach out to you to submit these requests. They should be a formal request that are documented with a business purpose for actually creating the group. So it should be conformed that way from a compliance standpoint. That's really good too, because you're documenting the business purpose of the Teams channel and what they are collaborating on in there. But the first thing you need to do from the standpoint of securing this is setting up the security group. Then from there, Microsoft's got this article that you can use to grab the PowerShell commandlets that you would need. So they're down here at the bottom, and you can copy this and paste this into PowerShell ISC. It's got to be the 64-bit version, just so you guys know, because you do need to run this module, install module Azure AD Preview before. So just run this real quick, and then all you need to change in the copy and pasted script that you grab from the website, which I'll link below in this video, is this group name. So just the display name in quotations there. So once you run this, it'll run this command, and it'll go ahead and give you a successful new command line here, and that's when you know it took place. And then from the end user perspective, I was in a admin user who I had as part of that security group here. But then as the end user, if I look in their portal and I click on create or join team, I don't have the access to do that anymore. I only have the ability to join it with a code, which is what a team owner can send you to join. So that's really their only option to join. So they either have to submit a formal request to join a team, or they would have to submit a formal request to create a team, which I think is great in restricting this down. So the next thing I wanted to show you guys here is to utilize private channels. I think this is pretty common knowledge, but it's really good to educate your end users on creating private channels when they're looking at setting things up from a security and compliance standpoint. So if I'm back in my administrator portal here, I click on create team, build from scratch, I do have the ability for private or public. So anybody can join these public ones without any special permissions. Private, you have to submit a request to the owners of the channel and they can either approve or deny your access into that channel. So think of these more like HR is a good example of a department where you wouldn't want everybody having access to this Teams channel because you might be sharing files with certain sensitive PII of your employees. So that's a good example, or something where you would want more restrictions on that so that anybody couldn't just hop in at any time. Access controls are part of any fundamental compliance regulation, so this is definitely something that you should implement. Next one here, blocking external access. Next couple actually are going to be in the Teams Admin Center. So to get here, if you're not familiar, you go under the Admin Centers in 365 and just click on Teams, and that'll bring you to this dashboard page here. So some of the settings that I like to configure immediately off the bat is under the organ-wide settings here. So the first one is external access, and by default these two are actually turned on. So I would go ahead and turn these off and save. What you're doing here is blocking access for external users. So if somebody reaches out, tries to add an external domain, they would get prevented from doing so unless it's an allowed whitelisted domain within your organization. So this is one I've added that's external to this tenant. And you'll notice here that if I go into that end users portal again one more time, I could try to search for this particular end user and it would come up with nothing, but if I'm going through the workflow of actually typing it out, it'll say search for this externally, and then my name will come up here. But if I search for a user that I haven't whitelisted, and go ahead and do that, I get a message that says we can't set up the conversation because it's not set up to talk to each other. You definitely want to block that external sharing, and then again a formal process will come in where they submit a request to be able to collaborate with external users. So if I was to do this, search, click on them there, now I've opened up a conversation with an external employee and I can actually have a conversation and chat with them here. So that's giving access, but it's being controlled at the administrator level. The second thing that you can do here is go under, I'm just going to discard this for now, I'm just going under guest access here. And with guest access, this is a little bit different. So outside of Teams, people can be added as a guest user within your organization. They can be sent an invite, for instance, to a SharePoint site or to collaborate on a document, but that doesn't necessarily give them access to a Teams channel. So if somebody shares a document with them and then tries to add them to the Teams channel, they would get blocked for doing so. But if this is turned on, they have the ability to then go and say, oh, this user's already authenticated to my organization as a guest user, I can also add them to this Teams channel too. So I like to keep this off just simply because, again, I would want that formal request coming through so I know who that guest user is coming into my organization and the time period of which they will live in my company before they are removed. So you definitely want to have an expiration on them being in there. So just make sure you're cognizant of who's having guest access, periodically reviewing access controls for guest users within the organization. You can search for those within Azure Active Directory, but just make sure that you're periodically reviewing this and it's a formal request for them to be able to access Teams channels. Next, we have block third-party applications. So by default in here, you have all these Teams applications that you're either published by Microsoft or are published by third parties. And by default also, the settings allow you to allow all apps to be included within Teams. So if somebody's within their channel here, they can go under the three dots, click on more apps, and they have this plethora of applications that they can download and start using. So this is just a concern from the data privacy standpoint, really, and data exfiltration to untrusted third-party applications within the Teams app. So I would switch this to block all applications in the sense of third party, because this isn't necessarily something where you're getting an untrusted application as far as being malicious because it's vetted by Microsoft. It's more so just the data privacy concerns that you might have there. So you definitely want to change that to block all apps. And then for the setup policies here, this is the default for the organization that's assigned to them, and this is what they can see on their left hand side here. So this piece on the left hand side is what they can see by default. I like to think that you can customize this for the apps that you want them to see all the time. Makes it easy for them to do their normal job and adopt the tools that you want them to access all the time in the applications. So from that standpoint, you can add other applications in here that may be org specific. You can assign these to certain users within the organization so that you can scope out potentially different departments having different applications within their Teams channel. So it's really more of the adoption standpoint and looking at this setting. The only pain is that if you do want to assign this to somebody, you would probably most likely want to do it with PowerShell. Otherwise, you have to go into the users section here, click on a user, go into their policies, and define the policy right here. So just switch them to whatever custom policy you made. Again, if you're doing this across many different users, probably best to go and use PowerShell to assign this to these users. So just keep that in mind, but I wanted to bring that up. The next one here, we have turn off file sharing and cloud file storage options. So for this one, by default in the Teams settings here, if I go under Teams settings, left hand side here, by default, people can go ahead and add external third-party file storage options within the Teams channel itself. So if you go into a Teams channel here, like we go to the file section, you'll see here we have add cloud storage. When I click on that, I have all these third parties that I can just add ad hoc here, which again is just another data privacy concern by adding it to an untrusted, unmanaged application into our existing environment. So what I like to do here is just turn off any of these ones that we aren't managing personally within the company and saving. These last four here that you see are for companies that have a different level of licensing. So if you have Office 365 Business Premium, these policies that I'm about to show you may not be applicable or something that you can do because of the licensing that you have today. Most of these and all of these actually are available with M365 Business, and that is a SKU that's $20 a month, but it does include a lot of heightened level features for security and compliance and mobile device management as well too. Additionally, these come, as far as ATP goes, as standalone SKU that's $2 a user a month, and some of these are included within the E3 package as well too, like the retention policies and DLP policies. But specifically this one is either standalone as part of E5 or it's part of the M365 business offering. Advanced threat protection is something where you can configure safe link policies and safe attachment policies within the 365 tenant across multiple applications like OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams as well too. So with safe links and safe attachments, the user is protected in the sense of a malicious link being sent over a Teams chat that they click on. There's real-time click protection that occurs. It's detonated in a sandbox environment, and it will notify them if it detects malicious content like a phishing site or anything like that. And then the same is done, real-time scanning is done with all documents and attachments that are shared and are stored in the document libraries. And so within the Security and Compliance Center here, you can go into the Threat Management section and you can set up these policies that can be detected in Teams as well too. You specifically have to turn this setting on though when you create the policy that you are checking this link against no malicious ones in Microsoft Teams. And the same thing can be true of safe attachments. So when you go into the safe attachments section here, you'll have an option up at the very top to check mark a box here, and it'll say turn on ATP for SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams, and then you can create your policy here. So I would always do that, and I would always set up both of those policies with ATP. App protection policies is part of Microsoft Intune. Microsoft Intune is Microsoft's solution for both MAM, Mobile Application Management, and MDM, Mobile Device Management as well. So within here, you can create application protection policies. This can be enforced on Windows 10 devices, iOS devices, and Android. But basically what it does here, and I've created a test policy, it allows you to set up a policy and add applications that you manage, you consider quote unquote managed, which include the entire Office suite here. And so you're saying I want to apply these certain protections to them and not allow people to copy paste data into untrusted applications, or save as into untrusted applications and things like that. It's really cool on unmanaged devices as well, like iOS and Android, that may be BYOD, that they're just using as their personal cell phone, where it's still protecting the applications and data on their device. It's encrypting that data, and it prevents them from accessing it in an unmanaged application like their native Outlook client on their device. It redirects them to the Office 365 Outlook client to access the data, so that you could remotely wipe that at any time. So I've set this up on a test tenant here, and I just want to show you on their device. You'll see a couple of things that show up that's part of the settings here. So in their OneDrive, I've configured it so you see this little icon which shows that it's managed by this organization, and the same can be true up at the top right corner here of the application itself. So it's saying this policy is in place. So a good example of this is saying I'm going to copy this information that's in this Teams chat, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it into my personal Gmail in an email. So when I try to paste here, it says cannot use Word content here. The same would be true if I tried to upload a file as well too into this that I saved as from Teams or something like that. So that's a pretty cool feature that you can turn on too. And these devices or app protection policies work across all the applications that you manage within the organization that you want to set up there. Next one, create DLP policies. So DLP policies, data loss prevention, you can configure in the admin center here. If you go into security and compliance center, DLP policies can apply across multiple different locations, and you'll see them here. I've set up this test policy for US financial data. You can add a policy, and it's got predefined templates for sensitive data like HIPAA, FINRA, compliant related sensitive data. So credit card information, PII, can all be automatically detected and either blocked or encrypted or blocked, but given the ability to override with a policy tip, things like that. So I've set up this policy here, and it's detecting content that's shared that's certain sensitive information here like credit card, US bank account number, ABA routing number, and I'm restricting them from actually sending it and potentially giving them some policy tips here. So to see that in action, again, I'm going to go to the end user portal here. I'm going to grab a fake credit card number just to show you. And back in this Teams channel, I'm going to go ahead and paste this in here. Try to send it. But you'll see that the message is blocked, and they get this notification that comes up as a banner as well too. And it gives them this little title that says, what can I do? You can click on that. This is something that I defined, so you can define whatever this is for this if you want. And if you think this is blocked in error, you can report it. So you can just click on report, and that'll go to the admin, and they can handle it there. So again, you can customize these settings to require a policy tip and let them override it if you want to, or you can just straight block it and they couldn't get that message about whatever it is you want to say of why that was blocked. So that's a pretty cool feature there that you can use as well too for data loss prevention. And you can set up a retention policy as well here in the Security and Compliance Center. So I'm going to lock out of that. So under Information Governance, you have retention. And with retention, you can name it whatever you want. So I could just say Teams Channel Retention. Click Next. And you could define how long you want to create something. This retention you can explore as far as if you want to retain maybe private channels that contain very sensitive information that you wouldn't want erased over time, or it could be certain key employees who leave the company that you would want to retain all their chat history or something like that. And you can define how long it's retained, and if you want to do a disposition review at the time of that expiration. And you can use advanced settings that detect for certain PII or phrases or anything like that as well too. So this is all pretty granular as far as the setting goes, but then you'll see in the locations you can choose teams and teams chats and include teams, include users, get very granular in that sense as well too. So again, you can really explore what this is, but most compliance regulations, there are Teams channels that contain very sensitive information, business critical information. I would definitely come in and set up some retention policies for them as well too. So we've gotten through all the recommended controls here, and I didn't show you guys this, but this is the ATP settings as far as what the end user would see. So this is saying they clicked on a malicious link that was detected, and they have the ability to just go back. The continue anyway, not recommended, is a setting that you can configure, so you can allow them to click through it, but most cases you're not going to allow them to do that. And then on the left there, it's showing the scanned in the file directory there of the document library associated with the Teams channel, and it shows you some of the documents it's detected as malicious. So some of the additional controls here that you can do that are optional, that may not be applicable, I'm going to go through here as well too. So defining a group naming convention, you can do this in the Azure Active Directory portal if you go under groups and you go under naming policy here. So first one that you come to is blocked words. You could upload a list of blocked words that you don't want anybody to ever use in a group name, Teams channel name for some reason. More so though, you can define a naming policy. So this is more optional, I would say, just from an organizational standpoint, where you can add a prefix or suffix and you can say it's a certain attribute. So a common one I would think of is saying, okay, type in your department and then your group name. And the suffix, you could add, anything you want. You could add another attribute, but you could also add another string that said, office B, whatever it may be. So it's something that you can clearly define here if you want it to be organized and want them to follow a consistent format for every single Teams channel that is created. So I wanted to show that one, and then I also wanted to show the expiration over here as well too that you can do. So you can select certain Teams channels, which are 365 groups, that you can say are going to expire in a certain amount of time. This is more so, I feel like, in the sense of a contractor coming in, working in a Teams channel for a little bit of time. You can define a custom time range of how long that Teams channel is going to live, but you have these controls in place to say it's going to be shut down on this date, and you'll have things in place to back up whatever data might be in there, because it follows a similar retention policy of 30 days of soft deletion, and then it's permanently deleted after that. So just keep those things in mind. I would be careful about this one, obviously, from the deletion standpoint, but there may be ones that you just want to review temporarily over time, and you can send the contact information there and go ahead and get prompted before, and it tells you here you get prompted 30, 15, and 1. So just make sure that you're reviewing that before it gets fully deleted as well. So the next one we have here is restricting auto-admitting external users to meetings. So with this one, this is back in the Teams Admin Center, And what you want to do here is go under the meeting settings, or meeting policies, I should say. So this one, by default, if you go down to the participant and guest settings here, it's by default set to everybody can automatically admit people, or everybody's automatically admitted. And with this, I consider it more of a security concern, just because if you have somebody who has the meeting bridge number compromised, or the bridge itself, and they just hop into a meeting without you actually knowing it and being notified, they may be listening in on more sensitive information that could be detrimental to the company. So what I like to do here is switch this to everyone in your organization, and to not allow them to bypass the lobby. So it's saying that it's going to pop up, in Teams, and say like user has to admit you in to get in. So at least somebody within the organization is acknowledging that this person is coming on, versus them just popping in. And this is obviously more applicable in meetings that are larger, but it's something that I would put into place. Lastly, here we have the conditional access policies. These are something where you have the ability to create these within tenants, again with the licensing of M365 Business, with Azure ADP 1, with EMS plus E3. So it's something where you have to have the proper licensing, but again, the M365 Business SKU has all of these settings available to you. So conditional access policy, you're basically defining certain conditions being met to enforce certain controls. In the sense of Teams here, when we're looking at basic architecture, you're looking at certain signals to then give them access, but also potentially require certain things to be in place, like requiring MFA, for instance. So a common policy might be, if you're not on my network, then you have to be prompted with MFA to get access to Teams. Additionally, if you're enrolling the devices into a management solution like Intune, for instance, and you have certain policies put up, you can create a conditional access policy that says, if you're not on a trusted device or a registered device, then I don't want you to access Teams. And that's a lot more restrictive, but it is something that you could drill down as well too, if you really wanted to create that granular of a policy. Within Teams though, or within the conditional access settings here, you can get to this by going into either the Endpoint Manager Admin Center or the Azure Active Directory Admin Center. And here, you can define all of these settings here to grant access. You can scope this to certain users or groups, or say it's everybody. You can select the application itself by just searching for it here. And you can click done. And the conditions, you can define additional conditions like certain device platforms or anything like that. But ultimately, you're getting down to the controls, which is granting access, but either requiring multi-factor, requiring the device to be marked as compliant, and things like that. So I have a whole video demo on conditional access if you really want to get granular with this. But on a high level, you can just gate access, especially in this remote workforce where we want a zero trust model into getting access to resources. So additionally, whenever the user then would log in, the settings that you set up there could define that they can't get access because they're not on the managed device, like on the right hand side, or they're not on an approved app or an approved location or on a certain browser or something like that. So you can get really granular with these, and they can see all the settings here, try to use the managed device to get access to the application. So that's everything I wanted to show you guys in the sense of hardening and the policies and controls I think you should put into place. So if you do have any questions or any comments, please leave them below on this video. Like and subscribe to the channel if you want to get more targeted content like this around Microsoft. Thanks, and have a great day.